Hello, my name is Julius Villalobos, and this is my discussion on the review of Velvet Goldmine titled Film, focusing on glam rock's blurring of identity by Stephen Holding. This film has been very compelling to me, as in I had to look back at it multiple times to really understand and grasp it. But the visuals are absolutely stunning, and I have not seen anything like this in any other film before. And this article discusses a lot of things that we haven't talked about in class or I've read in any of the other articles in the film, which really compelled me to do this presentation on this article. So let's continue. So, summary of it, Stephen Holding published this article for the New York Times in 1998 and discusses the themes of blurring identity during the glam rock era and how the musicians of the time took that to their advantage to make themselves a superstar. And Todd Haynes is compared and contrasted to Arthur Stewart, which I thought was very interesting because that's something we haven't really talked about in class. As in, we always talked about how maybe Haynes is just a big super fan and how this whole film is one big fan fiction. But the article mentions that maybe Arthur Stewart was in place for Todd Haynes. And this article involves the politics of glam rock and the film in general, as in they blurred the difference between masculinity and femininity and encouraged a refusal of any fixed category or sexual orientation or identity. So, which means no matter what, if like they were a boy or a girl, they expressed themselves freely in how they want to, and just did a big middle finger to the status quo, saying that we're not going to listen to what you want us to be. We're going to be what we want to be. And they took great advantage of that and got headlines, got a lot of traction because they were just doing something so differently for the time. And it's rejecting the prescription of identity. No matter what, if you're a boy, you don't have to look like a man to be a man. You can cross dress, wear women's clothing, wear bright colors. No matter what, you are going to be a star, and you're more free than anyone else who goes by these prescribed identity because you just live freely. Think, yeah. Let's continue. And Haynes and Stewart are both compared in this article, of course, but there are more differences than there are comparisons for the both. As in, Stewart is more from English working background, while Haynes grew up in a more comfortable situation at the time. So, but in the beginning, both of them grew up differently and have different circumstances. And Haynes was far too young to experience glam rock at its height, whereas in Stewart was already a grown man and was involved in industry for over 10 years, witnessed the assassination of Brian Slade, which is really insane. And Haynes was like 11 years old when David Bowie came out with Ziggy Stardust, so he was far too young to really experience it. But he got more involved and intrigued by the movement as he got older and got more exposed to it. And the biggest comparison is that both are just absolute fans of glam rock and are both fascinated by the fashion and glamour that it had to bring. As in, Haynes always saw older kids dressing up with glam rock fashion, having bright hair, bright colors, and just looking different. And he was just absolutely fascinated by that. The big thing that this article mentioned that I thought was very different is how anti Hollywood it is. How it doesn't go by any particular story, no boy meets girl or boy, or there's no happily ever after. And it's not even a typical rock and roll movie, as in Almost Famous, which is more has a more makes more narrative sense and has a more straightforward story. But this one just goes all over the place and goes back and forth between events, and it's a lot more looks over narrative. But I feel like that works in the film's advantage because it's just so intoxicating with its visuals that you just get immersed in this world of glam rock, and it's just absolutely incredible. And the glam rock movement is remembered as a phenomenon, and how it really didn't do too much in the end of it, but if you lived during that time, it was something different that no one has ever seen before. To conclude for this presentation, I really agree with Holden's takes on the film, as in he brought in different discussions on it that we haven't talked about in class, as in how anti-Hollywood it is. We talked about how the narrative is very different and it's not very straightforward, but I never really saw it as anti-Hollywood, which I thought was very, very interesting. And the visuals are what makes up most of the story and makes up most of the film, how there's multiple numbers and songs, and it's the article describes it as science fiction, which I didn't really thought about that, but looking at it now, it makes so much sense. And how it the article really argues well how the lines of identity are blended to the artist's favor, and they all took advantage of that to become superstars. So thanks to Professor Harrison, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much.